So I'm really excited to ask you a few questions about partnership. When you were explaining some of the barriers in particular, what was going through my mind as I was hearing some of these, like judging, controlling, domineering, was how often I might find myself in a situation where there's multiple of those at play happening. And I'm thinking of particular examples where my child has now committed to football practice. I've signed them up for the season, I've paid in full for the season. We're many practices into it, several games into the season, and they're having, wet feet. They're ready, cold feet. They want to quit. They want to end the season. And I can feel several of these pieces come up. Judgment. I believe they're making a bad choice. I think it's a wrong decision. They need to think about that a little bit more. I can tell that there's all these pieces of kind of wanting to control how they're viewing this decision they might be contemplating.
Right.
And I really want my own kind of agenda. It was a lot of money. The season cost a lot of money. So I wonder if you could kind of walk through how to break that down for me again, how to approach this using partnership. How do I come into partnership around a scenario just like this?
Yeah, well, great questions. And this is a great topic because it is multifaceted. And agendas, to highlight another agenda, because this is a normal situation for a lot of parents they find themselves into. Their kids get excited, they want to do it, and then they start doing it and they don't like it any longer. So it's normal, you're not alone. And sometimes the agenda might even be that, hey, I want you to play this, or I think it's important you play a sport, or I think it's important you're good at football or basketball or volleyball or whatever it is. And so we have this really agenda-driven conversation with the child. So I'd ask, before we start diving in on how, I'd actually encourage you to think about and discuss what are the side effects of that. So let's say you do apply those things you just brought up. If you come in with your judgment, what might happen when you go to a child to have a conversation about getting them to go to a practice or going to their games, and you bring judgment to the conversation?
Well, I know the way it's gone before, the way it's likely to go, it usually goes, is if there's a piece of that judgment, they express anger. My child gets angry,
Mm-hmm.
and then they.
And what might that judgment comment look like?
That pretty straightforward. I think that might not be a good decision.
Yeah, so you put your judgment that it's a bad decision to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so then you see your child get angry, frustrated. You feel them disconnect from you.
Pretty much right away with that one, even though I think it's kind of just trying to be sort of mild. Like, yeah, I don't think that's a good decision. It sounds okay, but I hear from what you're talking about, the partnership, that I do feel that disconnect.
Yeah. So partnership, we're trying to come alongside with somebody. So it's putting our agenda to the side and helping to find a way to work with them on something. So identifying where do they want to go, what do they want to accomplish, how do they want to go forward with things. So we're identifying more of what their agenda might be and taking that into strong consideration and pausing ours and stopping ours and more being curious about what's going on with them. So then what they have to say becomes it becomes a serious thing. It's weighted, right? We take it very serious what they say, and we don't just blow it off and negate it with our own agenda or our judgments.
I can feel it in myself even as you're talking about it, like this tightening in my stomach going, oh, but letting go of my own agenda can be rather challenging, because almost a little bit scary. If I were to open up the conversation as you're describing, I don't know what might happen. And
right.
Maybe at the end what if they bring up good points, and then I don't know, I see how this kind of challenges some of the ways that I guess even the needing to control gives me a little bit of security about this whole thing. I don't really open up this type of conversation for that reason.
Yeah. So it's the worry that if you allow some giveaway to that child and allow them to collaborate with you and partner with you, your agenda may get changed or go away completely, and theirs may come in and override it, and that's a scary thought.
Yeah, in some way I'm realizing that talking it out, that this could be, because we're charting on, it's uncharted waters.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if you might speak to that a little bit. How does somebody who hasn't done this before, what is it going to be like? Maybe some words of wisdom as they attempt to embody some of these principles in partnership. Perhaps one at a time, noticing these pieces that may be complex at play. What are some words of encouragement of going into this place that maybe is brand new?
I think the first step, especially when you're just trying to start these ideas and concepts, become aware of what we talked about first. Start at least becoming aware of your agenda and becoming aware of your judgment, and then more than likely you're probably going to be doing that, right? Your agenda is going to be coming out strong in your language. And pay attention what happens to that conversation. Is it really getting you what you want? Is it really getting somewhere that is effective? Maybe you get the kid to agree to keep going to the sports and going to things, but at what cost? What happened to the relationship?
Yeah, then they're just doing it to make me happy. They're not really happy.
Right. How do they perceive you now? Right? Has it changed?
No, not in a good way.
Right.
Maybe more as a bully or like he's been brought up an enforcer.
Right. So now it's severed the relationship a little bit. It's caused some side effects. You still might get your end outcome. They might still go, but now we have side effects to the relationship between the child and the father or mother. So that's the first thing, is start paying attention, because it's hard to let go of our ways. But pay attention what happens with them. Pay attention what happens to the relationship. Pay attention to how the child communicates with you when you bring your agenda to the table or you use your judgment. That would be some of the first steps, is awareness is key, and identifying the side effects of some of these things.
So as I'm practicing awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying this out for some of the first times,
Mm-hmm.
and I notice my agenda, and I mess up, can I start over right then?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
how might I
I would
bumble
encourage
through
that actually, because we're all human, right? Like, it's going to happen. Our agenda's going to come in. It happens to the best of us. I still at times catch my agenda getting pushed into what I'm doing, and normally what I do is I just stop there. So if my agenda's starting to come through, then I might be saying something like, it's the best thing is that you go to your practices, and I might go, actually, you know what? Hold on. I'm more curious about what you think. What do you think are the potential problems if you don't go to practices and games? What do you think might be the potential good things that come if you continue to go?
That feels so natural, because I am curious, and naturally I'm interested in what
Mm-hmm.
my child wants what their thoughts are about it. That gives me a moment to step back from the agenda and really shift that energy right then, and kind of hit a reset. Come in with curiosity.
And most people, your children, anybody really, if you catch yourself with your agenda with somebody and you pause it, stop it, and then go back and do behaviors and actions that invite a partnership, normally people will respond really good to that. So our children will engage. They'll see that we're bringing their opinion forward. They'll see that we're trying to get them to engage with us and collaborate with us on this decision-making process, instead of it just being our decision forced on them.
That's really helpful. So if you don't mind, just to kind of help solidify this idea for me and for those who will be watching this, around how to begin using this partnership and sticking with this scenario that I think so many of us can relate to, with our child taking on some kind of new sport or something like that, and then perhaps changing a decision. So keeping with my example, I wonder if you could help me kind of play this out. What might one say? And actually give me some examples of how perhaps you would respond, or how I might respond. So let's just call him Johnny, comes home from school. I can hear him in his room, putting things away, getting ready for practice. Sounds a little bit frustrated and a little bit exasperated. And I come into his room to see if he's ready, because we're about ready to get on the road, and he's not quite ready yet. I'm like, what's going on, Johnny? We need to get going. Grab your things, get all your equipment, get it in the bag. Let's get on the let's get in the car. And he says, I don't want to. I don't want to play football anymore.
So how to respond?
Yeah.
So a lot of what we're doing, this one's really focused on partnership, but a lot of the principles of the spirit of MI that we talk about, we need to understand the entirety of what MI lead is and understand all the components. So I'm going to talk about some of those components here, but I'm not going to do a deep dive that you can get when you go into the full length training of the complete what is motivational parenting. However, looking at this specific situation, we're going to want to kind of get what's going on. So kind of moving into a curious stage, because we're inviting them to collaborate and work with us. We want to hear their opinions and their thoughts. That's how we partner, right? Because if it's all about my opinions, my thoughts, my agendas, it's not a partnership. If it's about our thoughts, our opinions, our agendas, our solutions, our ideas, now we're moving towards a partnership. So I'd probably sit down, because I'm, as a parent, I might be taller than the child and I might want to get on an equal footing. So I might sit down on the bed or somewhere that's comfortable and just say, Johnny, tell me what's going on. Right? I'm opening up the discussion to hear what's happening with them and trying to diffuse the situation, because I can see there's some anger going on.
I can tell that's a definite shift in my thinking, because I'm feeling the pressure of time. I know we're running a little bit late. I don't really think there's time to have that kind of conversation. But what I'm hearing you say is make some space there to actually ask them.
Absolutely. Well, and we talked about that earlier, right? Time can be a barrier to us having partnership. Feeling time constraints, feeling pressure, that can cause us to feel like we can't take the appropriate time to be partnership. But like I talked about earlier, if you want to get good at these skills, you might want to identify what does happen if we press and we put that pressure for the time constraints onto our child and we respond that way. What's going to happen?
Probably, I think if I imagine myself in that situation, shut down, and possibly blow up at me.
It could.
Before.
Right?
They have before. Yeah.
Might get really angry. So recognizing what might happen with the typical way we do it might help us identify that it's actually okay. We have the ability to make decision, right? What's the reality of it? If the child needs a moment to talk about this is a serious thing for them. If they were sick or hurt or other things going on, we would make the time and space. Well, something emotionally or mentally is going on that needs to be taken a look at. So we need to make the time and space equally as well in this moment. So we need to stop, see what's going on.
That adds a lot of perspective. Sometimes I know gets pushed aside when we feel that barrier, one of those barriers of oppressive time. And I can hear that there's possibly multiple ways of actually addressing it at this decision point for me as a parent with my child, about either they're in the room, or maybe we could talk about it in the car, inviting us to have a conversation about it in the car and after practice tonight. I can tell they're really having some second thoughts about it, and I'd like to know more. But for right now, let's get on the road so at least we can be heading in that direction, maybe, or maybe that's still pushing my agenda.
That's another way we can do it. It is more agenda driven, but we can identify, because you got to remember what's going on with the kid right now. And that's what we want to understand. So on a basic level, there's something that's increasing the frustration for this child. And there's a reality that they are equally feeling the pressure to go and do whatever this practice or game or wherever they're headed. They feel the pressure to hurry up and get ready too, while trying to compete with whatever's going on that's creating this frustration inside of them. So that pressure is causing whatever else is going on to be even more heightened. So if we can relieve some of that pressure some way or somehow, we can create a situation where we can actually have a good, healthy discussion around it. So whether we make the time right then and there and make it okay to be late for practice, or whether we say, okay, look, your team's counting on you. Can we go ahead and hurry and get ready? We'll get in the car, we'll talk about it on the way, and if we don't have it resolved at that point, let's talk about it some more. After practice, let's go get some ice cream or something, we'll sit down and talk, or let's go for a walk afterwards and just you and I talk about what's going on. We can, just remember, your agenda's pretty heavy there still, because you're still basically mandating they go to practice. So just recognizing that does pull some of the pressure off, but not completely. So you still might have a frustrated child.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And in some cases, maybe this is sort of the compromise of I'm trying out this new space, I'm trying to create this new space. I also have this value system that if we've made a commitment and we're right here, like this isn't the time to decide not to. Maybe we should have talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, maybe that's a lesson learned for us as a parent.
I missed the signs.
Right. Maybe we go, oh, we should have talked about this earlier, or maybe even helping the child decide that, right? Of, hey, when you're frustrated like this, what are some ways that we could have dealt with this prior to the moment? But again, we're trying to partner with them, so we're helping them identify maybe different ways to not end up in that situation again. Now, the reality of it is we probably don't want to have that conversation while they're heightened. That's a conversation to have later. Because if we try to force a conversation about what could we have done differently in that moment,
I'm just telling them they're wrong.
right? They're just going to feel frustrated because the issue, whatever is causing the frustration in the moment, it's still there. So it's not dealt with yet.
Okay. Very helpful.
Just playing this situation a little bit more though, basically we're doing the same thing through the conversation. Whether we have it then or later, no matter what, we're trying to collaborate with them. So we're going to continue to ask them questions of, well, how do you think we could resolve the issue that you're having with going to practices and make it easier on you? Or what could we do differently? Or if we see the consequences of their choices to step away, we might want to ask them about what some of those consequences might be so we get a perspective from them. And we might see, well, what might you do about that? How could we go forward if those consequences play out if you quit? And what are the ways that you could go forward to work through some of the frustrations that you have to possibly be successful at this sport still? Again, we're trying to partner with them and collaborate with them. So we're trying to have a conversation about it versus just forcing them to comply to our agenda or what we think is the right way.
Yeah, I'm really having a better understanding of this idea of partnership, having talked this out a little bit, of being with them in this challenge. As you said, some of these pieces of understanding that there's actually something in them that's creating this pressure, this pressurized thing, adding the time to it in my own agenda, and everything else is just like, it's bound to blow up in a way that's kind of costly for our relationship. So we're not communicating. How do I really want to
Think of it like this, right? Like we get in these mindsets that we own our kids, that they're almost a possession and they should be performing and doing what we want, right? And they should be our partner. They should have to just listen to us. However, that we know from human behavior that causes a lot of problems. It doesn't matter if it's your parent doing that, it doesn't matter if it's a boss doing it doesn't matter if it's a colleague, a friend, a family member. Anybody doing that creates problems in the relationship. So if you stopped and thought about it for a minute, and thought about truly what does collaboration look like? Could you imagine when you're trying to collaborate with a colleague or your supervisor by walking in and saying, well, you are supposed to completely do all these things? Right, that's not a partnership or collaboration. If you want to collaborate with someone, just think about a stranger for a moment and how you would actually collaborate with them. And treat your child similarly. Take the time to explore and figure out what is the best path forward.
Yeah, those are some helpful thoughts to create perspective of how to approach this a little bit differently, because we're in this familial relationship, and it does become it becomes sort of a distant thought that they have their own world going on,
Right.
and so partnership is actually bringing both of those to the table, is what I hear, instead of me going, I have my agenda, we need to get going, I gotta get home, I gotta prepare dinner, I also gotta pick up your sister, I gotta do this, I need to get laundry started, so we need to get on this show on the road, get your things, let's go. It's actually, there's a whole nother world there that I give space, and we're actually partnering. And then a lot of the other things I see where we run into problems.
Their world is equally as important as yours, right? And the second we make their world, their opinions, their thoughts, their feelings not as important as ours, we've destroyed collaboration. Partnership is gone.
That's not the no longer equal and fair or balanced as you were talking about in partnership.
Yep.
So I really appreciate you helping me to flush out a lot of these ideas. Hearing this all for the first time can actually, there's a lot of substance in partnership, and I'm really appreciating the depth that this really offers in the relationship that I or anybody would have with their children. And in that depth and complexity, I realize there's a lot more than can be covered here, and lots more personal questions and places I would like to take the conversation. What do you recommend for the viewers who may be in a similar place, wondering how they may be able to go into more personal details and get more examples and more guidance in implementing some of this?
So practice is always good. So first off, doing some things we talked about in here, and go practice everywhere you can. That'll help. Two, letting people know you're trying to do these skills, like your spouse, friends, so they can give you feedback. Just be ready for feedback, right, if you're going to ask for it.
Of course.
And then, obviously, partnership is just one component, one piece of a much larger concept. And so to really get good at what partnership can be, you really need to learn all of what MI Lead is, and how those skills can influence the way you parent. So the larger training is one way to get more of what we're talking about and how to actually makes it work. Or come and get consultation, and in consultation we'll really start identifying what you're doing, help you develop the skills, and really go through everything so you understand the whole concept beyond just partnership.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a much better sense of what to do next.
Awesome.